The battlefield was silent, the echoes of explosions still ringing in the distance. The alien warrior, her emerald green skin reflecting the dim glow of the alien world's twin moons, lay crumpled on the ground. Blood seeped from her wounds, staining the rocky terrain beneath her. She had fought bravely, but the battle had been too much for her. With one last breath, she closed her eyes, surrendering herself to the darkness. Her vision faded, the pain and fear melting away. For a moment, there was only silence, then a warmth spread over her body. It wasn't the cold, harsh metal of her ship or the damp, lifeless ground beneath her. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy, as though she was encased in a warm cocoon. When her eyes fluttered open again, she was no longer on the battlefield. The sterile white walls of her room surrounded her, the soft hum of machinery in the background. She blinked, trying to make sense of what had happened. A sharp intake of breath escaped her lips as she realized she wasn't alone. The human stood by her side, his armor gleaming in the soft light of the room. His face was hard, but there was something in his eyes, concern, perhaps, or pity. She didn't know. She couldn't understand how she had ended up here. One moment, she had been on the verge of death, and now she was in the care of a human. The warrior's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of her memory. She was supposed to die in battle, her body discarded like so many others. But here she was, alive. She was alive, and it was the human who had saved her. This thought both puzzled and angered her. She had never expected a human to be capable of saving her. They were weak, insignificant creatures in the eyes of her people. Yet, this one had done the impossible. Her gaze shifted from the human to the strange surroundings. The room had a softness to it, unlike anything she had ever seen on a battlefield. A strange bed, white sheets, and soft lighting created an atmosphere of calm and atmosphere that made her feel out of place. She tried to move again but found herself too weak to do so. The human remained by her side, silent and patient, as though he had no intention of leaving. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. For the first time in her life, she was uncertain. The warrior, who had fought countless battles and stared death in the face more times than she cared to count, now found herself vulnerable, unsure of what came next. The human, who had no place in her world, had somehow become her savior. She couldn't decide if that made her feel weak or indebted. The human remained silent, watching the warrior closely. His presence was strangely comforting despite the confusion that filled her mind. She could feel the weight of his gaze, but she refused to look away. She was a warrior, and warriors did not show weakness. As the seconds passed, the warrior's confusion only grew. Her wounds had been fatal. There was no mistaking that fact. Yet here she was, alive in a strange place with a human who had saved her life. She felt a flicker of resentment, but it was quickly overshadowed by a deeper sense of curiosity. Why had he saved her? Was it out of pity, or was there something more to it? She had always thought of humans as weak, their lives meaningless, in the grand scheme of the universe. But now in this room, it was as if everything she knew had been turned upside down. The warrior's green skin glowed faintly in the dim light of the room. Her platinum blonde hair, though disheveled, shimmered against the white sheets. She noticed the scars on her body, the reminders of the fierce battle she had fought. Her injuries still ached, but they were nothing compared to the confusion that had taken root in her mind. The human was still there, standing motionless by her side. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words failed to come. Instead, she shifted slightly in the bed, trying to sit up. Her muscles protested, but she ignored the pain. She was a warrior, and warriors did not show weakness. "Are you well?" the human finally asked, his voice low and calm. It was the first time he had spoken since she had awakened. The question caught her off guard. He was concerned about her well-being. That was not something she had expected from a human. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice steady despite the unease within her. "Why am I here? Why did you save me?" Her words were direct, demanding, as any warrior should be. She needed to understand why this human, who had no reason to help her, had done so. The human hesitated before answering. "You were dying. I couldn't just leave you there. You deserve a chance to live." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that she couldn't ignore. In her world, such sentiment was rare. In fact, it was almost unheard of. And yet, here he was, offering her life without expectation. The warrior's heart raced as she processed his words. The anger that had initially risen within her began to fade, replaced by an odd sense of gratitude. She didn't understand it, and she didn't like it. She had been raised to believe that humans were beneath her, but now, for the first time, she found herself questioning that belief. "Why did you help me?" She asked again, her voice softer this time. She had to know. She needed to understand. She had fought her entire life for a purpose, but this was different. The human's actions had defied everything she knew about her place in the universe. The human's expression softened, and for a moment, the warrior saw something she hadn't expected: empathy. He wasn't just some soldier. He was a man who had seen the value in saving another, even an alien, and that shook her. "I couldn't leave you to die," he repeated quietly. "It's not in me to just walk away." The simplicity of his words struck her. What kind of person was this human to act on such compassion? Her people would have never done such a thing. And yet, here he was, showing her a kindness that no one in her galaxy had ever shown. The warrior remained silent for a moment, taking in his words. She had been trained to fight, to survive, but she had never been taught how to respond to such actions. She was a soldier, and soldiers did not need help. Soldiers did not rely on others. But now, in this moment, she found herself questioning everything she had been taught. She turned her gaze to the window, the view of the distant stars filling her vision. The vastness of space, once a symbol of endless conflict, now seemed so small, so insignificant in the face of the strange human's actions. She felt an unexpected pull towards him, and for the first time in her life, she found herself wondering if there was more to this universe than just war and survival. The warrior continued to lie in the bed, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. She had always believed that her strength was what made her valuable, but now she was confronted with a reality she had never anticipated. The human, whose name she still didn't know, had saved her life, yet she felt a deep sense of unease. She wasn't used to being at the mercy of another. She had been trained to rely on no one but herself. And yet, here she was, lying in a human's bed, unable to even stand. The silence in the room felt heavier now. The warrior had been taught to never show weakness, never admit uncertainty. And yet, the human's presence made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. "You don't need to thank me," the human said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm and steady, but there was a hint of something deeper, something that intrigued her. "You were in pain. I just couldn't let you die there." His words were simple, but the meaning behind them was more complex. How could a human care so much for a warrior of another species? It didn't make sense to her. The warrior stared at him, trying to read his expression. She had seen many faces in her time, faces filled with greed, hatred, or fear. But this human's face was different. It held no judgment, no fear. He simply wanted her to live. It was a concept foreign to her, and it unsettled her. "I didn't ask for this," she replied, her voice steady despite the doubts swirling inside her. "I didn't ask for your help." Her words were harsh, but the human didn't flinch. He simply nodded, as though he understood. "I know," he said quietly. "You didn't ask for anything. But sometimes we do things because they feel right, not because we're asked to." His words hung in the air, and for the first time, the warrior felt the weight of them. She had always believed that her strength, her skill, was what made her who she was. But now she was beginning to question whether there was more to her existence than just survival. The warrior was silent for a long time. She wanted to dismiss his words, to brush them aside as the misguided sentiment of a weak human. But there was something about his honesty that struck her. She had never met anyone like him, and that realization made her feel vulnerable. She closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. She had fought countless battles, had seen her comrades fall in the line of duty, but none of them had ever shown her the kindness this human had. She was torn between pride and something else, something she couldn't name. "I'm not used to this," she finally admitted. "I've always fought alone. I've never needed anyone's help." Her voice softened, a hint of uncertainty creeping in. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," the human said, his tone gentle yet firm. "Not if you don't want to." There it was again, something she hadn't expected. Kindness, but not pity. It wasn't the type of compassion she had been trained to dismiss. It was real. The warrior looked at him again, her gaze softening. She wanted to reject his offer, to tell him she didn't need anyone. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was no longer the same warrior who had fought on that distant battlefield. She was someone different, someone who had been given a chance to change. For the first time, the warrior felt a crack in her walls. She had always thought of herself as invincible, but now she was learning what it felt like to be vulnerable. The human's simple words were slowly breaking down the armor she had spent years building around her heart. The room fell quiet again, but this time, the silence was different. It was filled with possibilities, the kind that neither of them had imagined when the warrior first woke up. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, the warrior felt a strange sense of hope rising within her. The warrior lay in the bed, her mind still racing with thoughts she couldn't easily make sense of. The human's words echoed in her mind, but she had never allowed herself to be swayed by anything other than strength. Now for the first time, she felt torn between two worlds. The human continued to watch her with patient eyes, offering her a kind of peace she had never known. His presence was constant, but not oppressive. He didn't demand anything of her. He only offered what he could help, safety, and perhaps something she had never thought possible: trust. "I don't know how to repay you," the warrior said quietly, breaking the silence. Her voice, though steady, carried an undertone of uncertainty. "You saved my life, but I don't know if I can trust you." Her words felt raw as she spoke them. She had been trained to fight, to never show weakness, and now she was revealing a vulnerability she didn't fully understand. The human remained calm, unfazed by her admission. He seemed to understand that trust was something that couldn't be given easily, especially not by someone like her. "I don't expect anything from you," he replied simply. "I just want you to know that you're not alone anymore." His words were genuine, and that sincerity made her pause. It made her question everything she had once believed. She looked at him, her green eyes locking with his. The warrior had always been a figure of strength and resilience, but now she realized she was at a crossroads. She could choose to continue her solitary path or accept that perhaps, for the first time, there was another way. The human's gaze softened as if he could sense the internal struggle raging within her. He didn't press her to make a decision. Instead, he simply sat there, offering her the space to think. She admired that. She admired how he didn't rush her, how he respected her autonomy. For a moment, the warrior found herself wondering if this was what it felt like to have an ally, not a subordinate. "Do you ever get scared?" she asked suddenly, the question slipping from her lips before she could stop it. She had never asked anyone such a question. Fear was something warriors didn't admit to feeling. But now, it seemed like the right question to ask. The human looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I think everyone gets scared," he said after a long pause. "But what matters is how you handle that fear." His words were calm, his voice steady. She could see the truth in them, but a part of her resisted. Fear was an emotion she had been taught to suppress. It made one weak. But now she wasn't sure what it meant to be strong anymore. The warrior stared at the ceiling, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always prided herself on her ability to fight without fear, but now she was beginning to see the complexity of it all. Strength wasn't just about fighting, it was about surviving. And surviving sometimes meant knowing when to let go of old beliefs. For the first time in her life, the warrior felt herself questioning her purpose. She had always known she was meant for battle. It was what defined her. But now, lying in this strange room with a human who had shown her kindness, she realized that perhaps there was more to her than just being a soldier. "I don't know what's next," she confessed softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I'm ready to find out." The admission felt like a weight lifting from her shoulders. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the uncertainty. She had a chance now to rebuild, to redefine what it meant to be strong, the human. Nodded, a small but reassuring smile crossing his face. "We'll figure it out together," he said. And in that moment, the warrior felt a shift within her. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to face it. The warrior woke up the next morning to find the human standing by the window, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. The light from the distant stars bathed the room in a soft glow. She watched him for a moment, wondering what he was thinking. His presence no longer felt strange. It felt like something she could depend on, and that thought made her uncomfortable. The warrior sat up in the bed, feeling the familiar aches of her body as she moved. Her wounds had healed, but the emotional scars were still fresh. She had spent her life fighting, and now, for the first time, she wasn't sure what to fight for. She had never imagined this being here, in a place where survival didn't mean victory. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. The question had been on her mind ever since the night before. She had seen the compassion in his eyes, the offer of something beyond survival. But what did that mean for her? What did it mean for someone like her, who had only known war? The human turned to face her, his expression serious. "I think about it a lot," he replied. "I think about what it means to live without the constant fight. What it means to choose something different." His words carried a weight she hadn't expected. He wasn't just talking about her. He was talking about himself too. He had chosen to help her, to show her a path she had never considered. The warrior felt a pang of doubt. She had always believed that the only way to prove her strength was through battle. But now she wasn't so sure. The idea of a life without constant conflict, without the need to fight for survival, felt foreign to her. And yet, something about it called to her. "I've never had a choice before," she said quietly. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, she didn't look away. "I've always fought because I had to. It was who I was." She felt vulnerable saying it, but it was the truth. She had built her identity on the battlefield, and now, she was being asked to let go of that identity. The human stepped closer to her, his gaze softening. "You still have a choice," he said. "You're not a soldier anymore, not here. You can choose to live differently. You can choose to find a new purpose." His words were like a lifeline, and the warrior grasped at them, even though she didn't fully understand what it meant. The warrior stood up, the movement slow but deliberate. She walked over to the window, where the human had been standing moments before. She gazed out at the stars, at the unknown future waiting for her. The life she had known was gone, and the path ahead was unclear. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. "I don't know what this means," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "But I'm willing to find out." She turned to face the human, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she was ready to embrace it. She had a chance to redefine herself, and that was enough. The human smiled back, his eyes filled with understanding. "Then let's find out together." His voice was steady, but there was something in it, something that made the warrior believe, for the first time, that there was more to life than fighting. The warrior's heart fluttered, not with fear, but with a new sense of hope. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew she wasn't alone. And that, she realized, was worth fighting for. A different kind of fight, but one that felt just as important.